Well, good morning, everyone. Started a little bit earlier this morning, March 28th, 2023. Lots of streams in a row. Started a little bit earlier this morning, March 28th, 2023. Okay, so it's kind of funny this morning because I was testing this part of the tiger. I put my finger right into super wet paint and dragged it down, and it looked terrible, so I had to fix that real quick. Okay, we're working down the head of the tiger. We're actually on the what I call the tiger beard, but it's actually like a mane of the tiger. So the tiger that we chose to kind of build this tiger off of digitally was a combination. Well, it's really an older tiger, and a combination of the eyes and the nose with like a younger tiger that had a more intense kind of stare to them. And one thing we found out with the Sumatran tigers, from what we were seeing, good morning, thinker, that the older tigers have a lot longer hair in places, a bit more scruffy. So we're going to add in that, all this down here. I'm really just kind of looking right now to see what needs to happen. And the first thing I'm going to do is grab my refined linseed oil, and we're going to do some oiling out. What is a bit frustrating is what we put on yesterday is a lot of in the darker areas of this painting. And the day before, and it's already dry and very dull. This is the nature of oil painting. A lot of pigments, when they dry, they get dull right away. And it's hard to, especially when it's in the darker areas, it's hard to see that color. Hard to see the value, hard to see everything. I'm actually going to go over some of it from yesterday. And I'm just adding refined linseed oil to the areas that we worked on maybe a week or two ago. You know, the first layer. This does two things. It brings out the real colors, values, well, the real hue, saturation, and it brings out the real hue, saturation, and value. Brain slow this morning of the colors. That way, when we put new color over it, we can actually tell what we're doing. We're not judging from an incorrect color scheme. And I brought out some of my bigger brushes that I was on when I was actually doing the first layer. This is still not very big. It's number 2 Monarch. And I plan on working a little bit faster, bigger strokes with all of the hair that we're going to be working with today. I want to get that flowing kind of look that you see in the reference. Hopefully you see the reference well. Yes, you do. Making my darkest dark that I can make without black, which is a combination of ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and a little bit of alizarin permanent. You got to be careful with that alizarin permanent because it will kind of take over a lot of your paint mixtures. But I'm keeping this mixture more blue than anything because I want to keep it cool down there. And I'm also going to dip into a lot of sap green and mix that up on the side here, because there's a lot of greens down there as well. And I might as well grab in a little bit of this cerulean blue hue, which is probably the highest tinting strength color I have, besides a phthalo. I know phthalo blue tints really strongly. It's a very strong color. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and, you know, actually no, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to grab a gray, my convenience color. We're going to be a little bit more convenient, but that's too light. What I'm looking at right here is I grabbed some of my Williamsburg colors. I have a set of neutral grays, 2, 4, 6, and 8. The higher the number, the lighter it is. Yes, alizarin permanent is a transparent color. So I need a lower number than 6. Let's go with 4. I want something darker. I should probably go with the darkest gray, probably at 2. Yeah, let's just go with the darkest gray. And I don't use that very much. That way, I can use up some of this, and then we can bring it lighter if we need to. And I'm just going to put this right up here, a big dollop of this gray. What I like about this Williamsburg, these grays, is they are mixed with a little bit of like warmer color, like a burnt umber or something. Wow, look at that blue is still in my brush. It's crazy. So they're a bit of on the warm side of a gray. And I'm going to take this white that I have down here and just blend just a range of grays real quick. And keep them on the cool side. Actually, an ultramarine would probably make that a better blue, or a closer blue to what we want. Sometimes I do this where, you know, instead of mixing up every single color that I see for the painting session and working hard on matching it, I'll just make up, you know, 4 or 5 dollops of color, right? That are the pigments, are the, you know, the colors that I'm probably going to be using throughout, except for, you know, what's already out there from the tube, and then just work within those. It's actually, you know, it's pretty easy to do, and you don't have to spend, you know, too much time doing things. I do want a color or a gray that's a bit warmer, so I'm gonna take some more of this gray, lighter and warmer, and I'm just gonna add all of my transparent earth orange to it, a little bit of yellow, and then lighten it up with white down here. There you go, that's much warmer gray. I could probably go a lot warmer, but we'll work on that. Is alizarin crimson a transparent color? If so, why do you use permanent? That's a really good question. Alizarin permanent is a transparent color. I will double check on that. But I'm 100% sure, even though on the, yeah, transparent. The back of my color is kind of, I bought the tube like this. I don't know where the color all came from, but it does say transparent on the back when I can look through the paint that's on there. And the reason why I got permanent is because alizarin crimson itself is notorious for being not having the light fastness. You have to look up what that means. Well, I'll kind of explain it to you. Hopefully it's not going to be very technical, but it will be an explanation. sometimes you go to like really like museums and you'll see really, really old paintings and all the yellow will be gone. Like everything's really pale. Like you'll see a figure, you know, a child or something, and they look dead, right? But they're obviously alive, you know, and whatever they're doing. But all the yellow has kind of leached out of them. And that's a good indication of, you know, back in the day, you know, hundreds of years ago, they didn't have paints that had light fastness to them. The color would just kind of fade away, you know, and, you know, over the years, maybe someone put the painting in sunlight and that would leach out a lot of colors as well. There's not a lot of light fastness there. You'll see it in really old posters. Maybe you go by an old store somewhere and all you see is this really old poster and the only thing that's left is blue. And you could tell that on that poster there was a lot of other colors that were part of that poster, but they're all gone now. And that's the light fastness of it. And the same thing was true with a lot of alizarin crimsons. You would use them and then, I don't know, 50, 100 years would go by, and then the color would tend to fade. So they, you know, with modern technology, they created a permanent version of it. And I use that. Actually, I don't think you can get just plain alizarin crimson in Gamblin. I think all they do is the permanent one. I mean, it makes sense. They don't want you to use a paint with a light fastness of 0 or something. And a lot of paint manufacturers, they have an indication on the back of the paint of, you know, the light fastness of the paint. So I'm just kind of really winging it here this morning. Putting in a lot of this mane really quickly. Trying to keep the shapes the way I think they should be. Need a little bit lighter color here. Whoa, too light, too light. Back it up. I guess to say, you know, one of the reasons why the main reason why I use alizarin permanent at all is for the color itself. Eventually, I will probably branch away, not away, but I'll branch out into other paint manufacturers. A lot of artists do this. They'll branch out into, you know, different paint manufacturers because, you know, maybe Williamsburg or Michael Harding or Winsor Newton or Rembrandt or heck, all the other manufacturers of color out there. Maybe they have this color that I need or I want that would be something I would use more often. But most often what happens is we kind of get into a subject matter that we're painting for years and we stick with the same paints that we've had for years because we know them well. We know what mixtures or how the mixtures work, how to manipulate the color to get what we want. And usually anything beyond that is kind of, you know, a convenience factor. Or there's an intensity of color that you can't get within the paints that you have. For example, I mean, with my palette here, I can't get a very intense purple. You know, that's not going to happen. A super intense orange, like my cadmium orange. So I would, you know, get that tube out. And I actually have a purple tube of paint just in case I ever need, you know, an intense purple. There is a painting I was working on, you know, a few weeks ago. And it was inspired by AI art. So I was on, like, when it started really blowing up, I was like, oh, well, let me check this out. Really used it as a tool to generate these really cool looking landscapes, and I was very happy with them. So I took a few of them into Krita and I started adjusting them. Because I still don't like and there's a lot of artists that do it now, where they'll generate these portraits or whatever in AI and then maybe make some adjustments, or not make any adjustments at all, and just sign it. And it's kind of like, okay, that's really kind of pushing the envelope. It's still art, and I'm still kind of on the fence of that, because well, anyway, I won't get into all that, but anyway. So I generated this landscape, and it had these crazy super bright teals in there that the only way I could reach it is by putting white down first, like just pure white, and then glazing over it with the most intense kind of teal color I could. And it still didn't reach what I saw in the digitally generated painting. You know, I see this kind of bluish purple that I really like. I'm gonna see if I can mix that up. Yeah, the thing that's messing me up right now is all this texture in here. I'm gonna go over that whole area again. And I switched back to a smaller brush because after putting down these strokes, I wanted a bit more hairy texture. So I went back to a smaller brush because I can really make it thin. Hopefully you can see that. I wonder if I can zoom. No, you can't. Try and zoom in on the brush. Nope, can't do it. I have to get like a macro mode out or something. Well, anyway, I'm able to flatten this brush out so that the edge of it is super thin, and I can you know, get these kind of hairlines. So I've really decided that, at least for now, I mean, I guess it could change in the future, but as it stands right now, this will be the last big painting that I do on this stream for a while. It's just taking way too long to really go through this. My process is time consuming. I'm not, well, you know, I could try and change up the process. Force myself to be more loose with everything I do. But that's really an unknown territory for me, honestly. And, you know, another thing I will say is that this painting is really unknown territory. I don't do animals very often, or at all. I painted two of my cats. But I want to feel a bit more progression myself. There's always something about, you know, feeling that completion that's very motivating. I like, part of me likes having a wall full of my paintings behind this painting. Part of me wishes they would all just sell, so I wouldn't have to move them or worry about them when I move them, or when we move. But I like the progression of, you know, completing another painting, another painting, another painting. And when you have a full-time job, it's really hard to, because I can't spend 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours a day painting. Actually, even if I didn't have a full-time job, I still couldn't spend that much time painting. I just, you know, that's beyond me right now, as far as I don't have the stamina for it. And I do art every single day. I could probably get there. I would have to slowly push outside of my comfort zone. You know, hour and a half, two hour-and-a-half chunks. That would be 3 hours. And then one day I would push one of them to like a 2-hour chunk, and then an hour-and-a-half chunk, so I'd get 3.5, and then keep increasing. The one reason why I push the daily art so much is because it generates that progress. Especially if you track your work. If you track your time, it generates that motivation. It's a constant build of motivation. So even though I'm not finishing this, you know, it's taken forever for me to finish this painting, What's nice about it is I can look at my website, and heck, I can look at YouTube now and just see that, you know, all the consistent videos that I'm putting up, like 6 a day on live streams, plus the other ones that I do, you know, once a week now. And I feel pretty good about that. I like being as prolific as I can. Even though each one of those videos are an hour long, and I finish maybe a 5-inch square of painting. You know, it's kind of like a mindset change, and that's all it is. It's such a fast-paced world now. It's no longer just important that you make a masterpiece. You have to make the masterpiece in a time frame, a very limited time frame. You know, we see it everywhere. It's not just as important that you lose weight and you become healthy, but you got to do it within, you know, a very small time frame. You know, I feel really proud that for the past 10 years, I've done art every single day. But I wonder if many people kind of look at that and go, really, it took you 10 years to get to there? I could get to there in 6 months. It could be very discouraging for a lot of artists. And that kind of talk is something I do all the time. You know, that all of we artists do all the time. It's like, you know, no matter how much we achieve, it seems like there always has to be more. You know, what's the next level? What's the next level? What's the next level? This constant thing. When it's more important, I think, to look back. Instead of looking out of ourselves all the time, and, you know, myself, I could be very personal with this. Instead of looking outside of ourselves all the time and measuring from what's out there, from these unknowns, you know, we measure ourselves from something we've seen in a magazine, some artist that has put up, you know, a painting somewhere. A person that has a lot more money than you in some way. And there's so much unknown wrapped around that, you know. How long did that artist work on it? You know, do they have a full-time job? How different is their life from yours? Do they have a lot more advantages that you don't? We don't know those things. Yet we measure ourselves from these unknowns. The better thing to do, in my opinion, is to measure yourself from the known, which is you. Look back, see how far you've come, and see how you can improve. Or just be happy with where you're at, you know? and go, okay, wow, yeah, I've improved. You know, I've increased my skill over these past years at a really good rate, and I'm happy with this. So I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing. Now, I hope that the things that I talk about on this stream, which honestly are not meant for, you know, this younger crowd of people, or maybe they are, you know, it's one of those things where, yeah, I would like a younger crowd to listen to and to watch my stream, and hopefully I could influence them to, you know, or at least improve their lives in some way. Give them an idea to improve their life, right? Anybody. I don't care what age you are. But if you, you know, I was looking at a lot of streams out there because I'm always wanting to improve in some way. I love to be able to just stretch outside my comfort zone just a little bit. Look what's out there and see what I can learn from, and if I can improve in some small way. So I looked at a lot of streams, like the top streams out there for artists, like art streams. And there was more, oh, how can I put this nicely? There was more mindless entertainment than there was actual art being done. And, you know, it is what it is, whatever. Okay, they are doing well because they have a very young crowd. They are young themselves. Younger than me, at least. And they're just having a lot of fun on a stream, just being wacky or whatever. And that's not for me. But I did look at their streams and I was like, you know what? There are a couple things that I can do to make this a bit more personable and interesting to the people that are watching. But the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to speak my mind, and personal development is very important to me. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of those ideas with anybody that's listening. So I hope that when I'm sharing with you my subjective opinions, my personal trials and ideas, that it's not so boring that you just kind of tune off and you're watching TV or something else. And maybe it is. You know, I guess even if it is, I will continue just to do this because this is me. We got to be ourselves. I hope it's influencing in some way. But why personal development, Chris? Why is that so important? Well, no matter how much skill you have, how much time you've put at the easel, well, actually, that does matter. It all matters. How much skill you have, how much time you put at your easel. But no matter any skill or talent or whatever, at the end of the day, in order to progress, you have to be able to make it to the easel. Or your tablet, or your sketchbook, or whatever. Your studio for sculpture. Whatever you do, What art demands is action, not inaction. What the creative process demands is action, not inaction. Skill, honestly, doesn't matter. It really doesn't. That's like the symptom. That is what happens after you put the time in and the effort. It's the outcome. It's like government. Well, the opposite would be government in some instances, right? So we have all these issues, right, that happen, that come about, and they focus on the issue to try and fix that, but not the foundational problem. Focusing on the symptom. And that's what we do as artists. We focus on the symptom. Oh, I need to get better. I need to improve my skill at X or Y, whatever that is. So we watch the tutorials, we watch the live streams, we watch all kinds of stuff. And we read books, we do everything we can to improve our skill. But the one thing that seems to be left out more often than not is the ability to just start and keep going. And I'm not talking 8 to 10 hours a day. I'm talking keep going as in consistently. Every day, or even 3 to 4 times a week, sitting down and creating. That's the ultimate skill. The ability to self-motivate, and when not motivated, to build up willpower so that you can come to the easel regardless of feeling. As Steven Pressfield would say, turn pro. There's a difference between an amateur artist and a pro artist. And it has nothing to do with money in my mind. Because I barely make any money on my artwork. But I consider myself a professional artist. And the reason why I consider myself a professional artist is because I show up and I do it. I do it religiously. And my daily art is that important to me, where it's gone beyond just a hobby, just an amateur approach. You know, I can't imagine like showing up, not doing art every day, at least for 30 minutes. It's like, what? Really? No, that won't happen. It's like so ingrained now. And yes, thinker, at some point, even if anybody from the company that I work with is actually watching this stream, I will say that my dream is to be a full-time artist. Is to not have a job at a company and to be able to support myself and my wife on not just painting and selling paintings, but diversifying my income into multiple revenue streams. You know, maybe some YouTube ad revenue, which is never going to be a lot. Tutorials, one-on-one coaching, mentoring. Selling prints, you know, all these kind of things that I can do that provide value to people. As much value as I can provide, that's what I would love to do. Just a tremendous amount of value to help people. So there's an exercise or a video that leads to an exercise, 2 videos actually, on my channel, and one is about setting the minimum. It's all about creative motivation. And then the follow-up of that is finding your big why. And this is a foundational approach, a foundational element that I think is necessary for everything that we do. And I did this exercise years ago. And my big purpose, my big why, the reason for me getting up in the morning has changed a little bit, but right now I look at it every morning and I underline it. And it is to help artists become better versions of themselves. And also to make art that moves people emotionally, that has some kind of story or narrative. Yeah. And I would highly recommend that everybody listening to my voice right now, whether you do it, you know, from my videos or someone else's, or if you already have an understanding of your purpose on this planet, or if you don't, to try and find it. Use some of the tools that I've given you in those videos to help you find it. It is the way that I've found that will align every action that you do. It will determine what you don't do. Wait, I want to reach this goal. I mean, it's like with the most simple things, right? Let's say you want to be healthy and you want to be able to run a marathon. I mean, there's tons of information out there what you need to do. And it's maybe your purpose in life to be really fit and run marathons all the time. You know, and the one thing that they say not to do is to eat this kind of food and to work out a certain point, you know, to exercise so much a week. And so you start removing these things from your life that will prevent you to get from your dream out, to get to your dream outcome. It identifies what you do and what you don't do, basically, to put it succinctly. So it's really important. It identifies what you paint and what you don't paint. It identifies how early you get up in the morning, what job you have, who you're in love with, how you interact with people. Yeah. You seem to be very methodical, procedural. Do you have a plan to become a full-time artist? Yes, I do. I really do. I think it's beyond the scope of... at some point, I will share that. Only if it works. Just rest assured that I have multiple books going right now and a course that I've taken and I'm still putting to action. And it's all about, you know, building my business. Oh, my business, by the way, is called Create Quest, if you're interested in. The website for createquest.net is actually down right now because I'm going to be using Chris Beaven as a DBA. So doing business as Create Quest, doing business as Chris Beaven kind of thing. But soon, at some point, you'll begin hearing more about Create Quest because I want it to be known that, I am professional at this. And when I start really offering things for people beyond what I already have out there, I want it to look professional. I want it to be trustworthy. And when that works, the day that I'm like, okay, I'm a full-time artist is the same day that I'll start some kind of course or some kind of tutorial to help other artists do the same. Okay, I'm getting a little bit far out of the beard zone on this painting. Okay, I'm going to step back real quick and look at the left side of the beard / mane of the tiger. All right, the first thing I see when I'm stepping back is that this little lighter area that's in there is too light. And I need a better fade from very dark into, these lighter colors here as well. It needs to gradually go into those lighter areas. So I need to change that. Yeah, I think that's it for the left side. We're almost to an hour. I mean, as I look at the reference, wow, it took my brain a while to figure out that word. As I look at the reference, there are some areas, these little green areas like here and here that are a bit lighter, but I don't think it works well. I think what helps it is that there's whiskers over this area that pushes it back, but it's actually too bright on the reference and on my painting. There you go. Just needs to be pushed back just a little bit. I don't need to darken it up too much. I'm going to bring some of these darker colors down into these areas. And I like doing this in such a way where, I mean, it's not like the blending that I do on my palette. The blending you do on the palette is really kind of a soft blend from here to there. I prefer a textural blend, especially with hair. I mean, I'm thinking about hair here. I'm not gonna do this really smooth blend. I mean, with this hair specifically. But, you know, on the nose, these little small hairs, I'll blend that gradually, much more gradually. But here, I'm going to do a textural blend. What does that mean? That means that I'm using kind of stripes, leaving some of what's there, and just adding, you know, splotches of dark color so that optically it looks darker. That your eye, the viewer's eye, will blend those things together. I mean, that's a whole video right there I could make. You thought that there was one way to blend. Nope. How many ways of blending are there? I mean, just visually. Not talking about physically, how to blend the paint, because there's like... I mean, you could use your finger, you could use 12 different types of brushes to blend. So you could do the blending that most people think of, where they take the paint, you know, and they move it around so it blends together and move two colors into another. You blend that way. Then there's what I'm doing here, where you take the texture, one texture into another, and then you let the eye do the rest of the work. There's also a blending based on glazes, so digitally it would be, you know, a bunch of overlay layers. Each one provides just like very subtle differences, right? I'm trying to think if there's any other ways to blend. Well, I guess you could take those and then combine them. A little bit of both, or all three. Let me see. Yeah, now I'm not liking that. Especially when I look at the stream on my phone. It's like there's a big hole here. It's just too much of nothing. And you know, I could fix that by darkening up down here, but then I'm going to start just darkening up everything. All right, let's change up the approach here, Chris. Let's change it up. See what we can do. Now this is going to be hard because now I'm going the opposite direction. I'm bringing the strokes up now rather than down. Here's where dexterity comes in. I mean, I think I did a whole video for a drawing warm-up. Yeah, digitally as well. Yeah, it was part of this stream, I remember. I think I've done that like several times. In different formats. But understanding, you know, well, digitally it's a little bit different because you could rotate the canvas and make it easier for your, you know, physically for your arm or hand to, you know, move in a certain direction. But what's interesting is the knowledge of what movements are difficult for you and what movements are not. So it's easier for me to have this kind of stroke this way. I could go down this way. I could go, you know, kind of over to the left, down to the right. But as soon as we start going up, yeah, it's dexterity is a little bit challenging. All these things that you don't think about. A lot of times you probably don't need to think about it, because as you work on it, as you're like, oh, this is what I want to achieve, so I need to do X, Y, and Z. And that was way too bright of a color. My goodness. What I need some intensity in here. Some interest. I need the value to stay the same, but I need some intensity. But back to what I was saying, a lot of times you're just working and you're training this stuff and you don't even know it. I get some pushback on the daily art because people are like, yeah, well, you're not really doing anything. I mean, you're not really completing anything, right? There's so much that you're training that you don't know about, because most of us are oblivious to all the complexity that's happening around us, like constantly. The habit buildings that's going on, everything. Like this dexterity. You know what you need to complete, and you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll turn the canvas, or maybe I'll put my arm in a different way. No, none of that's working. No, I just need to try my best and just work on it. You're building a skill there. But just, you know, the recognition is important, I think. And me trying to get this darn value that I want right here is taking like 12 different mixtures. It'll either go too light or too dark. I'm trying to bring some subtlety in this area. Getting rid of that dark hole there. But also it has to be the form of this tiger. So we have the muzzle, it goes back that way. So these lines here are not really doing what they should. They're going up, like the hair is kind of coming out of the top of the side of the muzzle, and that's not how things work in a tiger. Well, at least what I know about a tiger. A little bit darker there. Maybe add some dark orange like on the ref. Okay. I've jumped back into this chin and the muzzle here, because that's affecting how everything looks as well. And the texture here, I think, is more important than I thought previously. Darn it. Come on, get that value. Dark orange. Dark orange is easy. Burnt umber. Let's see, we're just burnt umber straight out of the tube. Yep, looks nice. The more that you make suggestions, Thinker, the more I follow them. Oh, you mean up towards the main, like up in here? And that, I think the reason why I follow your suggestions so much is not only because they've proven to be good in a lot of instances, is because your perspective is a lot further away than mine. And I'm not talking just physically, because that is part of it, but also kind of in a mental aspect as well. You're able to separate from what I'm doing a bit easier. And that separation, and I think if you're an artist, if you understand what I'm talking about. I think that concept, I think, is very difficult for a lot of non-artists to understand. And you say, well, how do you not see that problem? How did you not see that that was not looking right in some way? I need to find someone, a book or something somewhere where they've described that phenomenon better than I have and use their language. Do you know what I'm talking about, Thinker? Yeah, detachment. That's a good word. I feel like it still doesn't fully explain what you feel. I'll have to work on it. There's all kinds of kind of slang that's used, like tunnel vision, can't see the forest for the trees, too focused, in the zone, all these things, but they all seem kind of, hard to reach. It would be hard to reach for a novice or an individual that doesn't do art. I don't know. I'll keep talking about it, and then maybe one day I'll find the right words. not enough definition in the shadow next to the muzzle. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to work on. I mean, especially on the live stream, you're not seeing anything in there. I mean, the camera just completely makes all this area really dark. But there's much more in there. Let me lighten this up for you. It's probably too light, but there's so much more happening in there. I think what I need to do is just get rid of these darkest darks that are right here. Ooh, but not with that value. Holy cow, that value is way off. Much too light. Yeah, so instead of putting it there, let me add in a couple more lighter colors here. And then I'm going to jump back into the darkest dark that I can mix up. A lot more alizarin permanent this time. And instead of putting it up there, I'm going to put it right under the muzzle. And I really hate that I'm reaching the limit of my value here. It's an indication that what I'm putting down is too dark and I would need to lighten up everything else. The possibility that I'm reaching a value that's too dark, and then when like maybe a tree back here needs to be darker or something else needs to be darker, like the shadow sides of the stripes down at the bottom of the tiger. And you're like, oh wow, well the value's so far off on the head that I would need to repaint the head lighter just for the legs to look right, you know, that kind of thing. This is why compressing your value range is so important. But I've reached the darkest dark I can make, unless I get my black out and I put black on the canvas. It's always a possibility. If I need to go there, I'll go there. So I'm putting this darkest dark in different places than what I had before. I had it up here. To help with that definition a bit more. Unfortunately, got to start my day. See you next time. Hey, thanks for showing up, Thinker. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll probably be shutting down here in a couple minutes anyways. I want to get this figured out first. I like how on the reference these hairs are going against everything else. And I know I pulled this directly from the image of this tiger. I'm tempted to put in whiskers right now, but I'm going to avoid that temptation. And I'll tell you why. The reason why it's very important to avoid that is because if I put in whiskers here, which are very sharp lines that would go from here to here, and that stroke, I have one chance on each whisker, and there's about 20 whiskers there. So each one would have to be planned out. I would have to practice it, go, practice the stroke, like ghosting over, and then one stroke on the canvas. And while all this paint is wet, it will mix with the color of the whisker that I'm trying to put in. And if I get it wrong, like in the wrong place, or it looks too shaky, which would probably happen more often than not, trying to paint over it without affecting the colors underneath would be near impossible. It's much better to just wait until this darker paint is dry, and then maybe go over it with a little bit of refined linseed oil to prepare the area after it's dry, so it's got a very thin coat of oil on it. And then if I can try the strokes, the whiskers, and then if they don't work, I can pull them off really easily with a paper towel. And do them not multiple times. I still don't have a bunch of times I can do them because there's residue of the paint that would stick on there and color this area, because you're using a very high value over a very dark value. So yeah, better to wait until the underlayers are dry, and then I'll come back with the whiskers and other textural kind of elements that I could add in. I talked earlier about increasing my art time a little bit at a time by, adding a half an hour or 15 minutes to what I normally do, and slowly increasing my ability to work longer on a piece. And what really helps with that is just being motivated by what you're painting, really interested in it. And these live streams have really helped me do that, honestly, because I can talk to others and I have a crowd, very small crowd, but I have people that I can converse with. And even when I'm painting on my own, Now, I find myself talking through what I'm doing. There's something about that that is motivating me to go longer, motivating me more about what I'm working on, and helping me gain a lot more understanding why I'm doing things. There's a lot of neutralized colors that I'm working with on this, in this whole area. Because it should be. This is very neutral. I want to keep it very neutral. I don't want it to heavily influence or heavily compete against the very intense tones from up above. From the top of the tiger's head, basically. But what's really fun is understanding value and being able to look at an area like at the bottom of the muzzle here and mixing up a super intense color and knowing that that value is right so you can put that down. It doesn't look too bad. It's not far off. It looks really good. It adds so much more interest. There's a rainbow of color in there. A rainbow of super intense color. And a person that's looking at this painting, 20 feet away is probably like, wow, it looks like a photograph. But then as soon as they move in, all of this texture and color and interest is revealed. I love that. That's really awesome. I like that. Alizarin Permanent is a good one. It's a very dark color, so in these very dark, shadowy areas, I mean, this is right out of the tube, Alizarin Permanent. And when you're close, boy, it just pops out right off the canvas. Unfortunately, because the value is so dark, I mean, I can't even see it on my camera screen that I'm looking at. It just goes away. But for, the human eye, it's just a, candy store of interest. Another reason why it's so important to go see art in person, in my opinion. It's great to see photos and everything, but even, the best printed books won't give you the same experience. All right, it's sufficiently an hour and 15 minutes in. Started at 4:30, now it's 5:45. Got a lot accomplished today, honestly. And as I get ready to stop, I see one thing that I want to do real quick. I want to make sure that this kind of bunch of lighter hair has a different shape to it. Kind of like that, yeah. Made a lot of progress down here. I think it looks really good. Let me step back. That's the problem with working too long is I don't have a cushion on this seat, so my butt's hurting. Yeah, that's fantastic. Loving it. All right, next stream, which is going to be fun. The next stream, I'm going to be working on the right side of this tiger mane and be getting that figured out, which will be a lot easier because I'll just follow what I did on the left side because that looks good, and then just go from there. One thing that I always do, and I think is really important, and actually I'm doing this flat, but I'm using, oh, maybe I'll put it up so that you can actually see what I'm doing. Yeah, one thing I always do is clean off my palette, and if you don't have a glass palette, you don't have to have one if you don't have the money. Another way to do it is a lot of people use paper palettes, and I know they have paper palettes out there that are a nice gray tone that you can buy. It's like a neutral gray. I'm going to try and use that, leave that gray on my palette, but I'm pretty sure by tomorrow it's going to be dry. Or at least very thick, and it's going to have a skin over it of dried paint. But we'll try. We'll see. But cleaning your palette off after every session is very important. There are so many artists I see out there, and I just cringe when I look at their palettes, and it's just like they're just caked paint all over the place on their palette. And, you know, they just keep piling up more and more paint on their palette. I've seen some palettes where, you know, the places where you actually put the paint daubs, like around the edge, it's literally like 5 inches high of dried paint. And there's, I don't know, there's some kind of pride in that or something. I don't know why people, like artists, do that. But what you're doing is, if your palette is just nothing but a jumble of colors, you're mixing paint here on top of a jumble of colors that is nothing like, well, you know, let me rethink that, because usually, you know, you start your painting and you're on a gray canvas, like I'm on a gray canvas. So the color matching is a lot easier because I'm mixing on a gray palette, like you see here, and I'm putting it on a gray canvas. So there's a relativity there that happens, and that's important. Depending on what is around a color will make that color look differently. Now, on your paintings, it's a different story, because what you have there on your painting is the relativity that you need. Like, how does, you know, the colors I put here look different from, you know, the muzzle or the nose or the green of the background or the body? You know, it's important to see that relativity. And if you have paints that are dried on your palette that don't match that relativity in some way, and confuses that, it's just going to be harder for you. So I do this from experience. I used to be one of those people that never cleaned my palette and was like, whatever, you don't need to do that. But yeah, the other part about it is not only are you making it more difficult for yourself to see the relative color of things, but every now and then there'll be some little chunks of dried paint that you pick up in your brush, and then they go right on your canvas, and there's these little chunks of dried paint everywhere. And that creates, like, depending on how the painting is lit, that will create these little like little shadow areas, and people are looking at the chunks of paint on your canvas rather than the eyeball or the background. It's like very distracting. yeah, anyway, that's my diatribe there. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. Hopefully this stream was informative and not too boring, but I'll be doing it again tomorrow at the same time, 4:30 my time, 7:30 Eastern time, and I will see you tomorrow.